It is fantastic to have you with us today, Fabian. Would you mind just introducing yourself to the audience and telling us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm Fabian Broich from Germany. I'm the head of performance at IJESPORTS, and I have been in esports since 3 years now. My background is psychology and sport psychology, and previously played football on a competitive level in different countries, have played table tennis, so single and team sports, coming from a different background than the most people in esports, from traditional sports, and basically focus at Excel to create a holistic performance approach, meaning implement our pillars of performance that our players reach their best well-being and best performance level, basically. So I'm focusing on the outside of the game perspective.
So it sounds like you're trying to cover most of performance parameters, but that's obviously a massive area. Is there something in particular you take a lot of interest in when it comes to your players?
I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. In the competitive gaming scene, the players are really good inside of the game, whereas they are almost at their maximum performance level, while you see often people drop in their performance. I think that has a lot to do with their lack of awareness when it comes down to what their actual needs are, how to control emotions, how to be focused over time, and be able to verbalize and be in the moment rather than reacting and not being able to cope with stress. So we focus at the mental aspect, the nutrition aspect, physical activity, and sleep. I think that is our focus, and these are the overall human needs in order to perform. So basically, yeah, that's kind of the 4 areas we're massively working on with the players. Having said this, there is not the perfect formula. Everyone has different baselines, different issues, but we do want to tackle those different domains because they all have somewhat impact on their well-being and performance inside of the game.
Sorry, could you say those 4 areas again?
Mental aspect, physical activity, nutrition, and sleep.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot to do. Where have you found the most gains to be made? Where have you thought the return on investment there has made such a difference? I'm going to do that with everyone.
I mean, I think it really depends. In the end, we always focus on working on all of those domains. I do think that sleep is one of the most important things overall. People don't sleep on a proper schedule, going to bed way later than midnight, 2, 3, 4 a.m.s, don't get the amount of sleep they need in order to have the best reaction time possible. I mean, there's many journals out on how many hours of sleep actually affect the reaction time. So this is obviously really important, not only for them being able to play better, but also being in a better emotional state, not burning out, having rest, having a good rhythm. Movement is obviously massively important. We are sitting too much in the esports scenes in general. If you're a 9 to 5 worker, you're most likely sitting too much as well. So we're doing physical activity in order to strengthen their heart, create a bigger heart, and therefore they are more resistant to stress, but also create conditions that they are able to perform over a long time of period for better performances, so that they don't drop too much. On the nutrition side, it's really important that we don't have too many unhealthy ingredients. That means that we should always try to get the most natural sugars, that we implement the vegetables and fruits, but also look out for vitamin deficiencies. That is obviously absolutely key. You can imagine that players who are inside don't get the most vitamin D, which is obviously really important, especially in the winter or in the colder months. So this is things we're focusing on. We're supplementing for the players, but then also on the mental aspect, doesn't mean you have to have a problem just having goal settings. Personally, team goals inside of the game, outside of the game. Where do you see yourself within this year, within the next months, within the next 3 years, and how do we accordingly to your goals make plans in order to create systems to reach those goals? And talking about your strengths, talking about communication, about your weaknesses, creating trust and commitment from the players. So like I said, it really depends. Everyone has different needs. but these are key areas where more or less all the players get benefits out of those different parts.
I think they all sound very important. Is there something that you've tried that you think has totally failed and that you've decided that you don't need to approach anymore?
I think what's really important, what I've learned, is that I'm not going into something and think that is the best thing. I have to listen to the athlete because maybe it makes the most sense for me, but it doesn't make the most sense for them. So the solution lays in the athlete and not in me. I'm just encourage or empower him in order to find his solution, support him and guide him along the way. So I think that's the biggest learning, because as a sports psychologist, you always plan and can do this, and that. Whereas that's what I think. And my solution for myself doesn't mean it's your solution for yourself. So it's more in like narrowing down what this specific person needs at a certain time and then working on this.
That's fair enough. And in your job so far, maybe that was the case, but what have you found has been the biggest struggle?
I think when I started 2.5 years ago at Schalke, I didn't know too much what to expect from esports. I observed a lot. I was really watching, observing, and I realized that these players don't have the awareness of what it means to be a professional or what it means to play for a long amount of time on this level. They understand it's important to play. They do not understand what it means if you play too much, because then you create mental fatigue, and if you play too much and you create mental fatigue, you get emotionally worse, you get performance wise worse, and also most likely you end up not playing good, not feeling good, and that's a lose-lose scenario. So what was really important for me is to understand, okay, how can I make sure to apply what I've learned but also have done myself on a sports level, because I do think it is important to know the basics or background and have scientific approach in your mind, but you have to break it down that's digestible for the athletes. And what you normally see is that when you come as a performance coach to these teams, I started at esports, so I didn't have any prior experience in esports. They think, what is this guy going to tell me? He was a football player. I'm a professional esports player. If I'm lucky, they are neutral, and most likely they are neutral or negative towards me, because everything new creates stress and they like to be in their comfort zone. So it's just creating the relationship. Luckily, I was quite successful. So with success and people talking about you positively in this scene, and like, let's talk about League of Legends. This is 10 teams. I'm working in the third team now. At least most people have heard my name, and also luckily there are mostly positive comments about me, so that makes it then easier. But in the beginning, I think everyone is neutral when you're lucky, and normally most people will be pessimistic, but I think while creating trust and while helping them out and delivering on their demands right away, you create credibility, and from that point on, you help them with sleep or you help them with some issues they are having, and they feel better, and then they want to come to you again because they want to feel even better and they want to get even better. So it's like trying to somehow get your foot in the door, and when the foot is in the door, then you have a relationship, and then I think you are working in tandem.
Well, that's led me on to a popular question we always ask, being how do you advise someone to get their foot in the door, specifically for becoming a performance coach in esports?
I think most important thing is that you have played any kind of sport, have been within a group, have done something, competed yourself, because it's one thing to know, another thing to feel and be part of this. Also the dynamics, understand all of this. Having said this, I think the most important thing is starting with an internship. Before I started at Schalke with my performance coach position, I did an internship there. Um, I think it's the most important thing to get experience. I work with a lot of athletes during my masters for free. I want to gain knowledge. I want to gain experience. Also to have a different variety of athletes. I coming from football and table tennis, but I ended up working with basketball players, with also female volleyball players, with a windsurfer, with many different sports. And I think that's the most important thing, because, like I said, everyone is quite different. And even though you talk to two different football players, they are doing the same sports, they are still quite different. I think the more experience, the more different scenarios and cases you have, the more you are prepared to do this job. And what is really important is, especially in esports, that you're confident about yourself. Because if I say that most people are negative towards you, if you don't believe in what you are saying, or you're questioning yourself, or any kind of this, I think you will never be successful, because they feel that. And I think it's more about being open-minded, having a lot of experience yourself, having a good amount of empathy, and obviously the academic background. But I think there is not this one formula of success, or everyone has to understand for themselves what they want to do. For me, it's actually kind of a benefit that I'm a German and not a native speaker in English, because I will not bore you down with too much scientific language, because in the end, I have to explain things I know very well to people who maybe have never heard about this. So if I use really difficult terms, they already lose me. And with my broken or straightforward English, it is really easy to address the client or the athlete. So I actually also prefer working as a sports psychologist in English compared to German, because sometimes language, or knowing too much language, or too nice words, can actually confuse the person. And I always try to make it digestible and really straightforward and easy. And if I see, okay, someone asks me, okay, why is sleep important? Okay, it's better for my emotional state. And then someone says, okay, can I hear something more? Okay, it's because of also the frontal lobe, and your frontal lobe is important for your high cognitive functioning, and you basically always activate this during playing, and there's two ways to deactivate it. You can do that as well, but if I start talking about the different lobes and explain them a lot of scientific knowledge, I think that would be over the top. But some actually do like that. You have these players who are proactive towards you. They come to you, and as soon as you have a relationship, they really want to know more and more and more. There's some people who ask even to have a journal or books and want to read more about this, and some say, just tell me what to do and I'm just going to do it, and I believe it's going to work. And if it's not going to work, I stop doing it or come back to you and ask why it's not working. So you have really different people, or some people who don't do anything in the beginning, but then at one point, because I also think it's important that you practice what you preach, they see, okay, this guy is quite 7 to 10 years older, he's more fit, has more energy, maybe there is something to what he's saying. But I think with some people you just have to have a really long leash, and give them some time, because it's also they have become a professional esports player by playing the game, and all of a sudden someone tells them you can do that and get even better.
Well, we recently spoke to Grant at Excel Esports, and one of the things he really hammered home was a data-driven approach. Is that something you buy into in the same way, or do you feel a bit differently about that in terms of monitoring performance in your players?
I think it's always really difficult. I think it gets to a philosophical level, because data is important. We can track nowadays everything. We have had never more journals about mental health, about nutrition, about sports, but we also never had more issues in this regards. So it's one thing to know all of this. I think it's way more important to apply things. That means, of course, data is important, but we can measure everything nowadays. And sometimes when we start measuring everything, we lose focus of what is most important. Having said this, we use the Aura Ring, for example. I mean, that is nothing more than data, pure data on the sleep, on the readiness, on the resting heart rate, deep sleep, all the different sleep phases. And of course, we use some parameters, use them for our KPIs, or the Excel performance indicator, how we call them. So of course, data is important, but also in the end, we're talking about humans, and we can't say this one person is one and the other person is two, or I have a brother, or in the case I would be a twin and my other brother is still different, even though we are really similar. So like for me, it's a philosophical level, because my best friend is called Fabian. So Fabian played football, I played football. We both are written down as Fabian, same age, played football, but we're completely different person.
Yeah.
So it gets really philosophical. But yeah, of course, data is important, because otherwise it's just a lot of trial and error, a lot of folks wisdom, and so on. And also you have to have some baselines, and to have to start something and create intervention and use scientific approaches. I think data should be, or scientific resources and formulas or knowledge should be the foundation, that you know what is connected with each other and correlated and what kind of parameters. But then you have to design this knowledge applied on this individual who needs it at a certain time. So of course, data is really important. We have to use numbers. We do personality assessments when we sign new players. We do questionnaires, so it's really important. We also track throughout the split, how is their level, are they overtraining, how is their mental fatigue. Of course, we use data and indicators and measurements, but I do think we are also tending nowadays to try to use everything or make it work, whereas sometimes it's not the case. That's at least my point of view.
To me, I respect your answer. It's a humble answer that's accepting we don't know everything. It inspires me actually to believe there's a lot more value in research. Typically, that's the way I interpret your answer. So, on that note, can you imagine carrying out more research with your team?
Yeah, I think it's essential. I mean, indirectly, it's not really research, but you see certain teams and certain players who have their unhealthy or just gaming lifestyle right now.
Mm.
And the study itself will be to see when they stop playing, when they're retiring, and I expect them to retire way sooner than players who are not doing those behaviors and actually have this full well-being health approach, basically having a structured day with movement, with fresh air, with good nutrition, with enough fluid and proper sleep. I do think there is a lot of things where we are lacking in the industry. It is about mental fatigue. I think mental fatigue is the most important topic right now that has to get covered,
Yeah.
to understand when a player should stop playing. When there is an app, there is a tool, of course, maybe using EEG or any kind of those things. But we have also worked with a company. They created a wrist, no, not a wristband, what's called a headband. The problem was when we were wearing the headband to measure all the things in the frontal cortex, that they got headache, and that's obviously don't what you don't want to have, that they are using something and then they're creating headache, and then we don't even know if the signals are correct, because there's additional effects on the brain which cause headache, and they didn't have headache when they didn't wear it. So I think to understand what's really going on inside of the brain, and to understand the intensity load. For me, I'm called head of performance, but mostly I tell my players less is more, quality over quantity, take breaks. I don't have a problem you playing 7 hours. I do have a problem if you play 7 hours in a row. Because yeah, we all know that the concentration and attention span can't be ever this long, and that we can easily digest those sessions into 1.5 to 2 hours to get the most out of this. So this would be an area I would really like to see what's possible if there's portable devices they track and give us the measurements we need. If we could have an app that indicates, okay, now this is a certain threshold that is met, now he has to stop. But I also, the problem with those things is you want to have that the player starts to create an awareness about himself without measurements.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I think it's good to get indicators, to have a baseline on how much a person can focus. I believe that even in esports or in League of Legends, for the 5 different positions, different depending on the character and depending on the game they are playing, to be honest, and their position. But I do think an overall average or baseline would good to have, and then to work from this, and also educate the players just a little bit more how important it is and how much stress they actually give to their eyes, and obviously then also to the brain.
Yeah, the thing I would add is what you mentioned about breaks sounds very reasonable, but I think some recent research came out suggesting that actually taking breaks didn't change performance. So it's not to say taking breaks isn't a good or bad thing, but I just think, like you said at the beginning, we just don't know enough. And probably there's a lot of variation in how people respond to even things like breaks. We know in Asia, there seems to be far more intense work structures. And it would be really interesting to know if they have a higher burnout rate, which I don't think we know nearly enough.
I do think if you have many more players who are playing a lot of hours, it's really important because you have the deliberate rule of 10,000 hours played to be an expert or mastery a skill. But at one point, you're not really getting too much more out of it than tiredness. And we all know it ourselves. If we have a 2-3 hour statistics session in the university, you are on fire. If you have 2 times or 3 times an hour, okay, maybe you might be still on fire because of statistics. But basically, what I want to say is there's a reason that a football game is 2 times 45 minutes, and after 45 minutes, there is actually a half time. Because if we expect that we play 90 minutes in a row, we will have less performance over time. We have more injuries, and it's not sustainable economically because teams needing more players. This is not that interesting because performance drops for the fans, and therefore it's also less sales. So I do think it's all about the right amount, the right balance. And like you said, it's easy to run 10 times 10 minutes instead of 100 minutes in a row for other people. So I think just if you want to play 6-7 hours a day, I would just recommend to not do it all at once, because there's also a reason why we are not eating 3 meals at the same time. We're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and not trying to eat everything at the same time. Basically, it's just to reduce stress, to make sure that we do something when we can use it, and then we have the best performance possible. But yeah, I do say to my players, if they play, for example, solo queue, if you're playing 2-3 games in a row and win them, keep playing. As soon as you start losing game, just do a little break, 5 minutes, get outside, get out of the maybe negative situation, or you're getting tilted or whatsoever, you know. So I also do want, if someone is playing really good and feeling it, to not get them out of the flow. But I think it, like you said as well, I think that's also what I have been talking mostly about today, is it is important, less is more, focus and quality over quantity.
You mentioned some time ago about the importance of physical health. Obviously, I agree with you there completely. In your experience, because I suspect many of the players that come to you may not have had such a focus on physical health. When you start really emphasizing the importance here and perhaps suggest more exercises, do you see an improvement in their game performance? Do you suspect that it improves their sustainability or their careers or their burnout or their cognitive strength? Or do you think it's a mixture of everything that's helped by physical health?
I think there's many factors involved with physical health or physical activity. First of all, these players have a lot of issues in the wrist, in the back, in the neck, and it makes sense because we are not made to sit, we are made to move. So movement is absolutely key. That doesn't mean we have to run a marathon, that doesn't mean we have to do sports daily, but that does mean we have to move at least daily and get outside. Having said this, obviously if you start losing weight, if you're overweight, or you start getting and gaining muscles, it has an impact on your mindset, it has an impact on your self-esteem, and it has an impact on your confidence, how you see yourself, and that also obviously reflect on your performance and in-game. So this is really important. What also happens is that people are more emotionally stable, and this is one of the most important factors because, as we know, nowadays, recent studies showed that even cardio activity or condition exercise, repetitive movements like rowing, running, swimming, and so on, they're in fact working better than some antidepressants for depression patients.
Yeah.
I think it's completely underestimated the benefit of moving. And this is also why it's such a difficult situation with Corona, for example, that people can't really go outside and move and gyms are closed. I do understand that it can't spread, but also it has implication on the current health for people who are not having this virus. So I think overall it has a lot of impact, preventing injuries, being happier, having a better well-being, being more proud of themselves, being more in the moment and performing better.
Well, what we're actually doing is organizing a health panel around healthcare to try and formulate a 2 to 3 page report for esports teams at all tiers in terms of a set of basic assessments and tests that could be done to safeguard the wellness and health of the players. Is that a report that you would find helpful?
I mean, I think overall it's really important to share. That's also why I like to do these talks. I'm not the biggest fan to talk actually, because also in the beginning when I started to talk these interviews, I'm not English speaking. I'm a German and I'm not that comfortable. But with practice, you get better and get more comfortable. But I think what I really got out of this is that maybe one or two people listen to that and they get something out of this. And that's why I'm a sport psychologist, because I want to help people. Having said this, what you just mentioned, I think it's awesome. I think that in some aspects, esports is doing a better job than traditional sports, because even though the structure is not fully developed, because there is not that much history yet compared to maybe 100 years in football, people really try to create a good community, or at least a few organizations. That's also why we just had a brand update, and it's called The Power of Better. And it's not just a slogan, because we actually execute on our words. It's not just a marketing slogan, it's actually what we highly believe in and what we stand for. And that's also why we created a white paper. I can send you the link later, which
Yeah,
is
please.
4 to 5 pages about common injuries, about a gaming lifestyle, what it right now is, what it should be, and to get a better and healthier person and player. And this is free to download, and this is for the community, because we want to give something back. I think there are not that many performance coaches or health coaches in esports yet. And I think we have the responsibility to create a movement that we are obviously also competing, but it's not rocket science what we're doing. So we should actually share our knowledge, talk to each other, and just provide more knowledge and digestible information for young kids who are looking up to their idols. And even though to the idols who don't even know what they can even reach more when they are having a healthier lifestyle. So overall, I'm a big supporter of exchanging information, sharing what we're doing at Excel, and hopefully give some knowledge to people who can benefit and have a healthier and happier life.
Thank you for that. I'll make sure that we have a link to that white paper at the bottom of the page. I did have a few questions about general performance and how you handle things.
Yeah.
One question I had was, in League of Legends, the general rule of thumb for junglers and for players is you help the winning lanes, right? You help them snowball, you help them take control of the game. But when it comes to education or certain things like that, you generally try and raise the standard, or the notion that you're only as strong as your weakest link. So they seem to contradict each other. And I was just wondering, when it comes to performance, where do you focus your efforts in improving the team as a whole? Do you focus on improving the best, or do you focus on raising the standard of the weakest?
I think I work with everyone the best I can. I don't care if it's the best or the worst player. I care about if this person wants to get better. What means I care about if someone I have a feeling doesn't give it all, I'm not stopping working with him, but I want to get the most out of everyone. And this is just everyone gets the best version of themselves. I do think that some people need longer to create a relationship. I do think that some people have a different understanding of what it means to be a professional. There is other people who have more sacrifices to make than others. There are people who are more talented than others, but it takes some time. And that's why also I asked a questionnaire with like a lot of important question for me to get answered right away, because it speeds up and gives me a lot of I save a lot of time, because through observation it takes time to observe some of the things. I do think no matter what, the weakest link is important and the best is important. and I would not really change anything. I will work the most with the person who needs it the most. Having said this, that doesn't depend on if he's the best or if he's the worst. It's just the person who really gets something out of this. And we are also working, obviously, with our coaches. There is no coaching licenses yet, and I'm working right now on a coaching license in esports as well with the Sports University of Germany. But I don't think we should just watch the dimension of who is the best and who is the worst, because how do we know that the worst player can't be the best? And maybe the best player is doing everything correct, or even the best player is not even doing anything correct outside of the game. So it's when I get the question is, I'm sometimes really, really happy that some people have really bad schedules or they have not been doing the best thing outside of the game, because I know there is enormous potential. Whereas I'm also not unhappy when I see there are some people already really healthy, because then I will explain them that they are kind of a role model and what I expect them to be as a leader in the team outside of the game. You have sometimes leader outside of the game. They're not the best player, but they get the respect from the teammates outside of the game, and the other way around. And I think we should use their strengths, and we also should focus on the weakness. But what's really important in this esports domain is that we're always focusing on where we can get better, always focusing on mistakes and reviews, whereas easy becomes that we start forgetting how good we are. So it's between, okay, we can't just always focus on the strengths. We also should work on our weaknesses, but we should really not do a ratio of 2 to 1. So always focusing on negatives. We have to make sure that we are confident, have a good self-esteem, and know what we're good at. And as long as this is happening, we also can and should focus on stuff we can improve on. But yeah, I think it's really, really important to see it from both sides and not say, okay, that guy is not good. We're not going to put more effort into this. No, that is the opposite. If someone is really not trying to buy in, I'm actually getting more motivated, because I know that this guy sacrificed so much and there must be a reason why he is right there. And normally no one in this league wants to be last, and everyone wants to win. And that's why they are so good, and that's why they want to compete. So yeah, like I said, sometimes this is easier to work with people, sometimes it's more difficult. But in the end, yeah, I really enjoy it. And that's also with people. They're really different in how they perceive their possible future, how they understand how they're doing right now. But yeah, I think that's really important.
And I was just wondering, on a similar note to what you were saying about improving things, if if your team, for example, suffers a huge defeat, and the problem with League of Legends is it's or maybe that's the way it is. It's very hard to say, oh, one player was the problem here. It is truly a team game. How do you sort of improve performance based on game by game play? Do you use a lot of data there? Do you use a lot of the players' review of how the game went? How do you sort of put it together and try and improve performance?
I mean, inside of the games, this is where we have analysts, head coach, and assistant coaches. So I can't get too much into this because, of course, I don't have the knowledge enough to talk about this.
Yes.
Also, on the other hand, this is quite confidential, but of course, there's so much scouting, so much data involved. I mean, when it comes to losing a game, I think it's really easy, but doesn't matter if it's esports or anything else. It's if you're an individual athlete, you can't blame someone else because it's just you. In team sports, it's really easy to blame someone else. It's really easy to put the finger on someone else. In League of Legends, it could be the draft, it could be the coach, it could be my teammate, that could be a missed gank or whatsoever.
Yeah.
In the end, it does not matter for me because in the end, we are all into that. We are all becoming first place or we're all becoming last place, and everyone plays a part and plays a role in this, even though we coaches, because even though we are not playing, we try to provide the best setup, the best knowledge, the best tactics in order that they can execute on them. So it's always a we and not a me. And that is really important. But yeah, I would say there's a lot of data involved. I don't understand all of the data. That is what the in-game specialists are working with the players. They have a lot of individual sessions. Even players sometimes do presentation and want to explain why they're doing things. I
Nice.
think communication flow and role clarification is absolutely key in that. And in the end, also to understand, and that's when we start a season, that we create our pyramid of success, because that's a commitment, that's a team, and the values as the team shares, the players, and that's fully decided by the players. And I lead as a I lead the intervention basically, but it's really important that they agree on what they focus on. And we had discipline, honest feedback, team spirit, family, So then in the end, we hold them accountable for this, and we don't allow this to blame others. There is sometimes, I was a goalkeeper. If there is a shot coming straight at me and I let that pass, it is the goalkeeper. That's Fabian. It's me. It's my fault. But I do expect also our players in this situation that if there's a massive issue, or to say, okay, sorry guys, hands up, it was me, my fault, happens. But it doesn't mean to happen that if we lose a game, always someone has to step up. But I think it's just being in a team, is being kind of in a relationship with people with different backgrounds, different nationalities. And in the end, it all comes down to honesty and trust. And if I know this guy fucked up, or my defender did a big mistake, or he shouldn't get the red card, and he doesn't say something or even blame someone else, I get upset, because I would say, okay, that's my fault. But this is a really important thing of team dynamics again. So we focus that it's not becoming a blame game. We focus that it's a we instead of a me. And that is the most important thing for us.
I completely agree. My last question was, where do you think the biggest gap in terms of performance understanding is in esports at the moment?
People do not still believe, some people, that outside of the game, or the human needs are important for a human to perform on the highest level. I think this unlimited amount of hours practicing, don't get me wrong, they have to do a big amount of practice. I'm not saying they can play one game a day and that's enough. No, that's not what I'm saying. But they can't play 12 to 14 hours a day every single day. This is not sustainable. This is unhealthy. And for short term, it will be good, but it will lead to burnout. It will lead to mental fatigue. It will lead to other issues. And any kind of overtraining leads to injuries, if they are physical or mentally. This is in any high competition traditional sport, it's in any esports. So we have to really start focusing on monitoring and support the player and see them as a human, and not just as a product we can exchange or put a different tag or name on the back of the jersey when it's not working anymore.
I'm so glad you said that. That's the same way I feel about it too. Is there anything you wanted to bring up or discuss, Fabian?
I got so motivated and buzzed. I don't know if I haven't said something I would like to have said, but no, I think I'm good at this point.
Well, thank you very much for your time and for teaching us all about what's going on in terms of performance in this space.
Of course, thanks for having me.